And once again, I want to say greetings to each and every one of you, Kwabai, and welcome. Welcome to another round of the Conscious Monster Report here on LIB Radio, LIB TV here on livinginblack.com. My name is Kidi Owadu, aka the Conscious Monster. Weekday mornings, you and I get together live. We come at you from 9 a.m. Pacific time. That's 12 noon Eastern time. 5 p.m. GMT and 8 p.m. East Africa time, we get together with you and we deal with culture, consciousness, historical perspectives, entertainment, economics, education, health, labor, law, politics, religion, family, conflict, future studies, all areas of human interactivity and development. Today's date is Wednesday, the 3rd of December, the year 2025. In the Western Gregorian calendar. This corresponds to the year 6266 in the Kemetic calendar too, which we realigned our cultural clock. Welcome to the 7th millennium. You have found your family in a peaceful place here on LIB Radio, LIB TV, livinginblack.com. It is December, and we are doing our fund drive this month. We're asking each and every one of you to pick up a little bit, just a little bit, take the pressure off your brother. And if you should choose to, it'll be greatly appreciated. You can request a bonus if you want. I can send you the book. The book I'd like to send you is Kuchichagalea Villages, a practical plan for self-development, because we are about building for eternity, building for keeps. And so we're going to be persisting through this whole month. We are in dire straits. Hopefully I do not need to overemphasize that point, but we really could use your assistance. Here's what we have on tap for today's lesson. I hope you find it to be useful. China changes everything in record time. Today we're going to summarize the new book, China Changes Everything, an anthology by social justice activists, journalists, and commentators. Welcome to the Conscious Monster Report. Today we explore how China's development model, as outlined in the new book, China Changes Everything, could reshape Africa's future. We'll examine whether this approach offers the African Union a viable pathway to sovereign, sustainable development and poverty eradication by 2050. Join us as we analyze the opportunities, challenges, and implications of adopting Chinese-inspired strategies for continental transformation and economic independence. So China changes everything in record time. I have a couple of short videos I want to share with you. Let me cue this first one up, add to the stage. And this one deals with, this is Lily unpacks Silicon Valley's China envy. Why tech giants are looking east. You tell me if this is speaking directly to you.
A recent New York Times article highlights a fascinating mix of curiosity, anxiety, and envy among Silicon Valley leaders toward China. Long-held assumptions are shifting. What is behind this complex feeling? Let's dive into Silicon Valley's China envy. When Chinese tech firm DeepSeek launched a cost-effective, high-performing chatbot powered by less advanced chips in early 2025, many in the US called it a Sputnik moment for American AI industry. Venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz warned, as China races ahead, moving goods, people, and information at machine speed, we risk being stuck in the past. China's focus on practical AI applications and open source development stands out. Former Google chairman Eric Schmidt urges Silicon Valley to stop fixating on artificial general intelligence and learn from China's approach to integrating AI into daily life. China's open access to AI models and training data makes its technology more globally accessible, prompting more countries to adopt them. China's manufacturing and infrastructure power also draws admiration. NVIDIA CEO Jason Huang claims that China is well ahead of us on energy. They are right there on infrastructure and AI models, with chips just nanoseconds behind. Additionally, China's talent pool and massive market are significant factors. Huang notes that China has half the world's AI researchers and 30% of the global tech market, rapidly adopting new technology. Silicon Valley's envy reveals more about America than China, a nation clearly questioning its role in the global tech race. The New York Times suggests that US tech leaders might be overstating China's threat to push for more funding and policy support. So what seems like admiration also hides deeper strategic motives.
All right, that was Lily Unpacks and why Silicon Valley is looking to the east. And not only Silicon Valley, I do believe that we should be looking towards China for the development that we would seek to put into place as African people on this planet. We got a lot on the table. I have another short piece of video. I'm going to cue it up right now, and bear with me. It takes me a second to find this. Cue this video, and it talks about why Chinese technology is so inexpensive. And so let's put this video up on the screen, and let's go ahead and play this second video.
China has a state-backed tax return program for exports. When Chinese exporters go to customs and they have to pay tariffs on their goods, the government in China will refund the cost of the tariff. Now, in a normal economy following free trade rules, if you import a German car like BMW, you pay a tariff of a certain percentage on that car. And that's when it's reflected in the price of the car when you go buy it in the US. It will likely be more expensive to buy that same car here in the United States than in Germany if the car is imported. China does the opposite. Now, if you buy a $2 headphone, that means the cost of that headphone is actually $2, the same price that you can buy in China, if not cheaper. That's the key. Selling cheap to take market share. However, in this case, the market share will be the death of small businesses in the United States and elsewhere. And that's China's economic invasion. The strategy using cheap goods to conquer consumers, to build reliance on Chinese products, drive away the domestic competition, and establish dominance. So you have to understand that China has a state-backed tax return program for exports. When Chinese exporters go to customs and they have to pay tariffs on...
Okay, that did start to recycle. Play a second time. There are very complex, critical lessons. China did not rise from essentially the bottom, and it wasn't the very bottom. China's been a civilized nation for thousands of years. But China did go from its status as colonized, the victim of terrible warfare, genocide at the hands of the Japanese and the British. The Opium Wars lasted over 150 years. And then America's post-World War II ascendance to the top of the heap imposed a lot of restrictions on China. But China, since the 1980s, has overcome all of that. And it's now rising without stop. China lifted 90 million people out of poverty. It's a remarkable accomplishment. And so I am suggesting to all of us today that we got to take a much closer look at what has been and continues to happen in China. I want to say greetings to my sister joining us here today. I see you in the house for Africa One, Hotep, Brother Kitty, and Global LIB family. And thank you very much for tuning in bright and early for today. It is wonderfully appreciated. You are wonderfully appreciated, and we encourage others to be like you. Be responsive, be on time, in time, every day. You are so consistent, and I'm very grateful for that. So let's go into today's research. I've got quite a bit of research on the table for today. Essentially, we're going to be starting with a summary, a detailed summary of the book, China Changes Everything. There are some highlights in the book, and I did put up the book for our listeners who want to get their hands on it. I did put it up on the various websites, but let me copy it one more time because I'm not sure if Rumble allows you to go retroactive. And so what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to post up the first video, and that talked about why Silicon Valley is envying China. And I'm going to put up the link to the book, and let's begin our research into the book. There are several points the book makes. China is this century's greatest success story, rising from poverty to become a leading voice or a leading force for global change. Point 1, China's targeted poverty alleviation program has helped 800 million. I said 90 million. 800 million people out of extreme poverty. China's targeted poverty alleviation program has lifted 800 people out of extreme poverty. Point 2, China's solar panels, wind turbines, and hydropower lead global efforts to save the planet. That's pretty amazing. Point 3, electric cars, high-speed rail, clean and quiet metro subways set an example for the world. And point 4, the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, is extending China's infrastructure revolution to friends in the global south, consisting of seaports, highways, airports too, schools, hospitals, power grids, communication, instead of neo-colonial dependency. So these are 4 main highlights of the book. Let's go into this anthology, not analogy, anthology, compiled by the Friends of Socialist China U.S. Committee and edited by Kyle Ferrana. This book brings together perspectives from progressive activists, journalists, and scholars, examining China's development and global role. The book is organized into 7 thematic sections. Section 1, China's Road to Socialism, explores whether China represents a socialist or imperialist model, examining how Marxist principles drive China's development approach. Second theme, socialist planning in practice. This discusses infrastructure development, comparing China's transit systems and healthcare with U.S. approaches, and covers China's leadership in green energy technology and aquaculture. Theme number 3, plans for a future world. This chapter analyzes how Chinese and American strategies differ on peace and global problem solving, including space exploration and addressing artificial scarcity. Artificial scarcity. Yes, you and I live in a nation, United States, where capitalism drives artificial scarcity. You don't believe me? Toilet paper shortage. How come at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, how come suddenly, within a week or two, There was no toilet paper. What has toilet paper got to do with a pandemic? It's because they were testing us and created an artificial scarcity. That's not the only artificial scarcity they're creating. Housing, clean, wholesome food. It goes on and on. So theme number 4, moving from isolation to prosperity. This theme highlights China's targeted poverty alleviation program that helped 800 million people, I'm repeating myself, escape extreme poverty. 800 million. And examines Tibet's transformation and issues around Xinjiang. Theme number 5. The U.S. war drive against China intensifies. The U.S. war drive against China intensifies. This examines U.S.-China tensions, Taiwan's status, and escalating threats from the American perspective. Now, you can believe the United States is not going to take on the dragon. No. You could never do to China what they are currently doing to Venezuela, Colombia, and Panama. U.S. war drive against China intensifies. Theme number 6, China's impact on the world. This section of the book covers China's infrastructure projects globally. We're going to talk a lot about infrastructure creation, its foreign policy approach, and its role in international conflicts like Yemen. And then theme number 7, looking back and looking forward, which is what I am asking my listening audience today to do, to look back. Think about our history, our past, our relationships with other people. Do you get along with Chinese people? Do you know any Chinese people? And looking forward, we're going to eventually look inside of our own culture, our own ethnicity, our own global population of what I estimate to be about 1.8 billion Africans all over this planet. There are on the African continent at present 1.564 billion Africans. What are we going to do with our future? This anthology represents a pro-China perspective, arguing that China represents a successful alternative development model focused on poverty alleviation, green technology, and international cooperation rather than militarism. And I think we can all agree that unfortunately the United States has gotten trapped in militarism. Maybe it never was able to extract itself from militarism after World War II. Because if we look just post World War II, how many countries the United States has invaded or attacked? It's huge. It is huge list. Really is. So, and I can answer that question if you want me to, but any questions that you have you want to talk about today, let's have an ongoing engagement. Please, let's do this thing. Going forward, let's talk about China Changes Everything, an anthology by social activists, journalists, and commentators. This is a political collection arguing that China's recent trajectory fundamentally reshapes global possibilities for development, socialism, and anti-imperialist struggle. The book represents China not as a threat, but as an alternative model to Western-led capitalism, especially for countries across the global South. The core focus of the book, the anthology's central claim is that China's rise from deep poverty to a large, relatively prosperous industrialized society shows that rapid, state-led, socialist-oriented development is possible in the 21st century. Contributors to the book frame this as, quote, changing everything, unquote, for movements fighting austerity, underdevelopment, and U.S.-led hegemony, because it provides a living counter-example to neoliberal orthodoxy. And when you hear this term neoliberal, turn and run for the hills, because it is a trick. The main themes and topics covered in the books. These essays cover several recurring themes. One, domestic transformation, targeted poverty alleviation said to lift hundreds of millions from extreme poverty. The expansion of education, healthcare, and infrastructure. And the idea of a, quote, whole process people's democracy, unquote, as different democratic model from Western multi-party systems. A whole process people's democracy is what they call it. First of all, let's break down this alleviation of poverty. I asked of my AI conversation, how and over what time period did the Chinese virtually eradicate poverty domestically? China virtually eradicated extreme poverty domestically through a multi-decade state-led campaign combining economic reforms, targeted investments, infrastructure development, relocation programs, and social safety nets, with a final push under Xi Jinping from 2013 to 2020, lifting nearly 99 million rural residents above the national poverty line. So that 90 or 99 million number that I got was just in the last push from 2013 to 2020. This effort built on reforms started in 1978 that accelerated dramatically after the 18th Communist Party Congress in 2012, culminating in the official declaration of victory in late 2020. Key phases and timelines. China's poverty reduction unfolded in stages, 4 primary stages. 1978 to 1993, household responsibility system and initial rural reforms spurred growth, laying groundwork by boosting agricultural output and township enterprises. Point 2, 1994, or the second period, 1994 to 2000. The 7-year priority poverty alleviation program. Again, let me repeat. The 7-year priority poverty alleviation program aimed to lift 80 million from absolute poverty via coastal Western aid, microfinance projects, and compulsory education in poor areas. The third phase, 2001 to 2012. Village focus outlines, expanded subsidies, eliminated agricultural taxes in 2006, and introduced rural minimum living security DBIO nationwide by 2007. DBIO, with relocation pilots for unsuitable lands. Village focus outlines from 2001 to 2012, and then from 2013 to 2020. Targeted poverty alleviation strategy under Xi allocated over 1.6 trillion yuan, that's 250 billion US dollars, centrally, plus trillions more locally, focusing on 832 poor counties and 128,000 villages through precise household targeting, industry development, and relocation of 9.6 million people. This is pretty awesome. This is in the new book. We're breaking down the new book today. China changes everything. I did put the link to the book up for the Amazon link. There are other places you can get the book. And I do recommend other alternatives other than Mr. Bezos, but for convenience sake, I just put it up there real quick. Methods employed in reducing poverty. Core methods included massive infrastructure, roads, electricity, water, schools, hospitals, industrial relocation to create jobs, labor export training, cash transfers via DBIO, and ecological compensation for poorer areas. Over 770 million were lifted from poverty since 1981 per World Bank data, accounting for 70% of global reduction. 70% of global reduction was just one country. Let that sink in for a second. Now, the face of poverty is very unfortunately mostly Africa. Other parts of the planet are having issues, but they're quickly alleviating poverty. Bangladesh is one country rapidly in transition. India, Africa, 54 countries is the highest concentration of extreme poverty on the planet. Can we do something about that? Well, what other methods did the Chinese employ in reducing poverty? Over 770 million were lifted from poverty since 1981 per World Bank data, accounting for 70% of global reduction. Though using China's higher rural poverty line, $2.30 per day in purchasing power parity, and that's different than having $2.30. Purchasing power parity, $2.30 a day, you could eat. Relocations addressed, quote, geographic poverty by resettling people into new communities with services, while diversified funding from budgets, banks, and funds enabled scale. How did they reduce poverty? Green and technological development. China has achieved transformative green and technological developments, particularly in renewables, high-speed rail, electric vehicles, and grid infrastructure, positioning it as a global leader in clean energy deployment. Some of the top developments that China has engaged in include, number one, solar power surge. China has installed over 210 million kilowatts of new solar capacity in the first half of 2025 alone. That represents a 107% year-on-year growth. Let that sink in. 210 million kilowatts of new power in the first half of 2025, representing a 107% year-on-year growth. With solar output reaching 254 TWH, I don't know what that means, in quarter one of 2025. So that would represent about 100 plus kilowatts. A 48% increase, and poised to become China's largest clean power source by surpassing wind and hydro. Point two, wind power expansion added 50 million kilowatts in the first quarter of 25, or the first half of 2025, representing a 99% growth, reaching about 520 gigawatts total by the end of 2025. In the world, that represents 46% of global capacity. Wow. 46%. Just one country, China. Generating 307 TWH. What is TWH? Bear with me. I got to look up because I don't like just skipping words. And let me find out, what does TWH stand for? What does TWH stand for with electricity? That's close enough. And TWH stands for terawatt hours. So that's beyond gigawatt hours, terawatt hours. So that is very good. What is TWA? It's terawatt hours. Come on. Terawatt hour. Okay. Okay. So again, and let me generating wind power expansion, generating 307 terawatt hours in the first quarter of 2025, representing 13% of total electricity. And okay, renewable capacity milestone. China was the first country to surpass 1,000 gigawatts combined wind and solar. Total renewables expected at 2.4 terawatt hours, 61% of 3.9 terawatt total capacity by the end of 2025, with 400 gigawatt new additions projected for the year. Point four, clean energy records. Generated 951 terawatt hours of clean power in the first quarter of 2025, 39% of total, up from 34%, with wind and solar hitting 26% share in April 2025. Non-fossil sources now dominate new capacity additions. 91% of China's new generating capacity additions represent renewable energy. Wow, that's unbelievable. Or represent non-fossil sources. That would be including of nuclear power generation as well. High-speed rail network, the world's largest, at over 45,000 kilometers by the end of 2025, enabling efficient low-carbon transport and economic integration across vast regions. Whew, man, kind of makes you want to be a part of that, doesn't it? Africa can surpass it. High-speed rail network, that was what we just talked about. Electric vehicle dominance leads global EV production and adoption, with millions of vehicles and charging stations integrated into urban grids, supported by battery storage growth for renewables. And number 7, grid and storage advances. Massive investments in ultra-high voltage transmission and battery storage to integrate variable renewables, stabilizing the grid amid rapid clean energy scaling. My imagination is running wild, but my imagination spends millions of dollars, and not billions, not trillions. My imagination spends $1 million, $2 million per Kujichagulia villages, where it's to be a permaculture campus. Everything I'm talking about today can be developed, researched, and developed at a Kujichagulia village, preferably on the African continent. I have in my imagination 4 Kuji villages going up in Ghana, Kenya, Uganda, and Ethiopia. Kujichagulia villages, where we would bring students in mass to spend their holidays, their school holidays at our village. They could be learning a new craft and celebrating being young, dynamic young people. Culture preservation. Kujichagulia villages, and eating organic food and learning how to be healthy, stay healthy. Oh, what a wonderful vision. Global South relations. China's Global South relations, the Belt and Road Initiative, and other projects are portrayed as infrastructure-centered cooperation, including ports, railways, power grids, and industrial zones. These contrast with what the authors describe as Western debt traps and neo-colonialism. The World Bank, the IMF, these SAPs, structural adjustment programs, have drained Africa of its pride and the momentum that Africa had developed immediately after decolonization. And they have turned into debt traps and neo-colonialism. Kenya is a prime example. Kenya was primed to be one of Africa's leading economies, Ghana as well. But their leadership stepped back in, got back into bed with the IMF and the World Bank, and I'm not going to tell you what happened in that bed, but it was not an act of sustainable love. Chinese African Belt and Road Initiative, BRI projects emphasize infrastructure-centered cooperation, with China providing financing, construction, and technical expertise for ports, railways, power grids, and industrial zones to boost connectivity, trade, and industrialization in Africa. Now, why would African Americans not want to take the lead in doing for our family on the African continent? It perplexes me. I don't understand it. And I am not a stupid person. I just do not understand why our people don't do it. I got a question in the comment for Africa One, is it fair or realistic to apply Chinese success to a continent whose spiritual and cultural identity is severely fragmented and has not yet recovered from its colonial legacy? I have to think about that question because I want to answer in the affirmative. But it's hard to answer in the affirmative, especially the way your question is listed, because essentially the way I'm hearing your question sounds like Africa is holding itself back and getting no incentive or cooperation from African Americans. I was talking to someone recently about what's happening in Africa, and African Americans are going on missions to Africa. Most of those missions are Christian missions. So when you talk about cultural identity is severely fragmented, I know in a prime example of what you're talking about, and is not yet recovered from its colonial legacy. It hasn't even changed the colonizers' borders for Africa. So is it fair or reasonable to apply Chinese success? I want to answer yes, but I may be alone in this. These ideas that I'm talking about, I may be absolutely trapped in my own imagination. Can't even get 1,000 people to believe in a common vision. I hear constantly from Africans. I'm in contact with Africans on the motherland as well as diaspora Africans around the world. I hear from them every day. Yet there's no shared vision. Our people are all over the place. Fragmented identity, cultural identity, just absolutely fragmented. Is it fair or reasonable to apply China's success? I want to say yes, but I can't just come out and just say a direct yes. Let's say it would be most practical. It would provide the best outcome in a short period of time. Can Africa eradicate poverty in the same time frame that China did it? Not at present. Because Africa has been trying to eradicate this poverty for, well, the sustainable goals were really written for Africa, and then that 15-year period ran out. Now we have the Millennial Development Goals, and that is going to run out soon. Wow, why you got to ask such a hard question? Let me ask you, do you believe, and that's, I got to emphasize the word, do you, quote, believe that it could be done? Do you believe that it could be done? I do believe that it can be done. But I may be out there all by myself. I'm not accusing you, for Africa One, of not supporting what we do here on LIB Radio. We do know, I do know as a fact, you do support what I do, what we do. And I do believe that we are doing it for our group. So I'm going to go back to my original research, but geez, why you got to ask such a hard question? Why you got to ask such a hard question? It really is a hard question. Let's see if we have anybody in our YouTube family checking in on us today. If you are in the house, we'd love to hear from you. And I'll see in a second whether there is anyone there. Going forward, and I did say it could be done or that it can be done. That's different than will it be done. If we don't do it, then we're China's punk, Vietnam's punk. Others that have lifted themselves up are going to look around eventually and say, hey, listen, I feel lazy. Let me get someone else to do this work for me and I will take the money. Just as we have been Europe's punk, the British punk, the Americans punk, Canadians punk. Wow. Whew. That's a tough question. It really is a good question. You trumped me. Key railway projects that are taking place across Africa. These the Chinese African Belt and Road Initiative, BRI. Standard gauge railway expansion in Tanzania. China Railway Group and China Civil Engineering Construction Corporation are extending this vital line valued at billions to enhance freight and passenger transport across East Africa. Number 2, the Mombasa-Nairobi Standard Gauge Railway in Kenya. A $3.8 billion project financed largely by China Exim Bank has been operational since 2017, with extensions to Naivasha, connecting key ports to inland economies through further links to Uganda, face funding issues. Though further links to Uganda face funding issues. And I had an opportunity to take the railway from Nairobi to Mombasa round trip while there in 2022. And it was awesome. It was fantastic. It was fast. They had designed it so that animal migration would not be disrupted. And it connects several cities that are going to be brought onto the economic grid. One of which I thought would be a great place to build a Kujichagulia village. That's in Vai. Ethiopia Djibouti Railway. Electrified line improving trade routes from landlocked Ethiopia to Djibouti ports, funded and built by Chinese firms. Funded and built by Chinese firms. So if I were asked a question by my sister for Africa One, Sister Singai, is it fair or realistic to apply China's success in African investments to Africans in America or Africans in Britain? I would have to say no. They're not going to do it. I would gladly stand up and admit I were wrong. I'd be proud to say I was wrong in saying Africans in America, Afro-Brits are not going to do it. I'd be honored to say I was wrong. Going forward, we're talking about major ports and logistics. Ports like Chancay, through Peru, though Peru focused, similar African models include Piraeus-style upgrades. African examples feature Chinese upgrades to ports such as those in Nigeria and Egypt. That's Port Hartgrave, Hartgrave, I think it's called, in Nigeria and Egypt, facilitating export corridors. Hargrave, I think it's called. Lagos Ibadan Railway Link supports port access in Nigeria, integrated into broader logistics networks. Power grids and energy infrastructure. Green energy and power projects, record 24.9 billion US dollars in the first half of 2025 for renewables, including solar photovoltaic glass production in Egypt, $700 million investment by Zinyi Glass, and power grids, oil, gas processing in Nigeria, $20 billion investment alongside hydrogen and electric vehicle battery plants. Development financing, China provided renminbi 72.28 billion renminbi in special funds for African infrastructure, including grids yielding RMB $134 billion in contracts by March 2025. Industrial zones. The Suez Special Economic Zone is in Egypt, and Jazan Industrial Zone, Saudi with African parallels, focus on manufacturing, minerals processing, $10 billion investment, and high tech like EV batteries. Nigeria hosts major oil gas facilities and LNG green hydrogen developments. Overall, for the first half of 2025 engagement, Africa topped the Belt and Road Initiative with $39 billion in contracts, investments, emphasizing energy, $42 billion total BRI, Belt Road Initiative, plus much of it Africa bound, and manufacturing, $23.2 billion investment. Now, I want to emphasize a point that I made this week, and I'm going to be going deeper into this Friday on Making Money Fridays. The African American consumption level has reached $101.93 trillion annually. That's 1,193 billion. 1,193 billion. That's the annual consumption level expected by the end of 2025. And it is estimated that 17% of that will be spent during the months of November and December. This totally changes all my configurations on what are we going to do with Christmas. And if the book is going to come out, I got to put the book out sooner than later because it's getting crazy. If we consider Africans immigrated into the U.S. population living amongst us, but not native born, it is said to reach upwards of $4 trillion. But that's consumption. That's not production. Production is far less than 1/10 of that. Estimated at between $207 billion and $212 billion. Production. That means for what we consume, we manufacture about 9.34%. That's pretty bad. That's real bad. Why would we not? invests 39 billion, 23.2 billion, $10 billion investments, control Africa's mining, smelting. That's probably $25 billion investment. The DRC wants to become the smelting capital of the continent, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And the minerals coming out of there could supply the world for the next 2,000 years at current export rates. Let alone if they're exporting finished materials, well, 2,000 years. Why would African Americans not want to invest in that? It's peculiar. So overall, first half of 2025, engagement of the Belt and Road Initiative for Africa, I just posted it up. I posted it up for the Port Harcourt. Thank you for pointing that out. Port Harcourt. I've never been to Nigeria, but I do know I've been following what's been going on at Port Harcourt. And real quickly, just posting this up, and one more time, I'm going to post this up here on my page on Facebook, and let's go forward. We're approaching the end of my research, but I got a little bit more to go. Chinese Latin American Belt and Road Initiative projects focus on infrastructure-centered cooperation with China, financing and constructing ports, railways, power grids, and industrial zones through loans from institutions like the China Development Bank and Exim Bank, totaling over $94 billion across 138 projects from 2005 to 2020, and creating 600,000 jobs. This is Latin American, China's investment. Key port projects include Chancay Megaport in Peru, a landmark $3.5 billion project operational since late 2024, serving as a Pacific gateway hub for trade between China, South America, and beyond, handling containers, bulk cargo, and boosting regional exports. Port upgrades in Panama and others, including the Amador Convention Center opened in 2019, linked to port facilities, enhancing Central American logistics, similar expansions in Ecuador and Trinidad and Tobago for export corridors. Major railway initiatives. The Belgrano Cargo Railway revamp, Argentina. $2.5 billion modernization completed 94% by early 2023, boosting annual freight from 760,000 tons in 2013 to 2.65 million tons in 2023, aiding inland economic growth. The Twin Oceans Railway, Brazil and Peru, proposed transcontinental line under renewed 2025 feasibility study, connecting the Atlantic to the Pacific for resource exports amid complex terrain challenges. Additional lines, railways in Argentina, Costa Rica, roads and rail hybrids, and Bogota Metro, Colombia, urban rail are progressing slowly. Power grids and energy infrastructure. Renewable energy parks, solar projects in Argentina and Chile, plus dams across the region, new infrastructure like electric vehicle manufacturing and grids, account for 58% of 2022 Chinese foreign direct investment. That's $3.7 billion. Electricity and communications, broadband fiber optic cables, example given the China-Chile underwater link, and power transmission upgrades supporting energy stability and digital connectivity. Industrial zones and manufacturing. High-end manufacturing hubs, the EV, battery, bus and car plants in Mexico and Brazil. Medical machinery facilities integrated with ports for supply chain efficiency. Resource processing zones. In Peru, you have the Chancay Arequipa ports linked to mining exports and broader foreign direct investment in minerals, oil, gas, emphasizing industrialization over raw extraction. Political perspective. Let's put the book into political perspective. This book is openly pro-socialist and strongly sympathetic to the Chinese state and Communist Party, emphasizing achievements and strategic lessons rather than offering a balanced critique. Many contributors are left-wing activists and scholars who argue that China is fundamentally socialist rather than imperialist, and that its record on poverty, development, and resistance to U.S. pressure should inform organizing and strategy in imperialist countries. This perspective means contentious issues such as human rights criticisms, internal repression, or environmental and labor downsides are generally rebutted or de-centered, not foregrounded. China portrays its political perspective exemplified by the Belt and Road Initiative as a cooperative win-win situation for mutual development, regional integration, and shared prosperity, emphasizing non-interference, infrastructure-led growth, and economic complementarity without imposing political conditions. In contrast, the U.S. and NATO countries view the Belt and Road Initiative as a geostrategic tool for expanding Chinese influence, creating debt dependencies, undermining liberal norms, and advancing authoritarian hegemony through sharp power tactics like coercive lending and narrative control. Point 1. The Chinese view the Belt and Road Initiative advances domestic goals like exporting excess capacity, securing resources, stabilizing borders, example giving, countering terrorism in Xinjiang, and promoting a multipolar world via a, quote, community of shared future, unquote, framed as soft power through aid and investment rather than dominance. The U.S. NATO view, the initiative serves Beijing's long game to displace Western order, weaponize supply chains, control choke points, and export state capitalism, countering U.S.-led frameworks like the Indo-Pacific Strategy or G7's Build Back Better World, or B3W. Approach to global engagement. China emphasizes bilateral deals, state banks funding small and beautiful projects, quote unquote, small and beautiful projects, not like Trump's big, beautiful bills. State banks funding small and beautiful projects, and periphery diplomacy prioritizing economic ties over ideology, positioning the Belt and Road Initiative as a counter to perceived U.S. containment. U.S. and NATO responses include narrative campaigns labeling it a debt trap, security vetoes, on projects, alternative financing, example given B3W, and sanctions to restrict Chinese firms, seeing it as eroding free commerce and democratic values. The structure and intended use. The anthology is organized thematically, with sections on China's socialist road, its economic system, its international role, and specific case studies like poverty alleviation or regional issues. It is designed less as an academic monograph and more as a political education tool for activists, highlighting talking points and analyses that can be used in campaigns, study groups, and solidarity work. This is why I am doing this today. The main reason I'm engaging in this today is to engage conversations, study groups, solidarity, work, real action on the ground that will really make a difference. If we believe that we can make a difference. The chapter, Chinese Principles and Culture in China, changes everything, delves into the core values and cultural principles that underpin Chinese society, emphasizing how these beliefs shape the nation's identity and influence its development. Key cultural values include, number one, harmony. That's ma'at. The most fundamental principle. Harmony represents the balance and proper coordination of various elements in society. This concept advocates for peaceful coexistence and collaboration without uniformity. 2, benevolence. Rooted in Confucianism, benevolence underscores familial ties and extends these values to social relationships, emphasizing kindness, justice, that's ma'at, and social responsibility. Righteousness. This principle stresses moral integrity and makes just decisions for both individual and collective benefits, illustrating the societal belief that morality trumps mere profit. And I did emphasize the word trump when it comes to righteousness, morality. Yeah, the leader of the greatest economy in the world is the exact opposite of righteousness. Courtesy, embedded in daily interactions. Courtesy relates to respect, modesty, and adherence to social protocols, enhancing community bonds and maintaining societal order. Next point, wisdom and honesty. Wisdom entails discernment in decision-making and resourcefulness, while honesty emphasizes integrity and the importance of ethical conduct in personal and business interactions. An influence on national policy of all this. This chapter explores how these cultural values not only shape individual behavior, but also influence broader national policies. The values of harmony and collectivism, for instance, inform China's approach to governance, social cohesion, and international relations. So, in conclusion, the synthesis of these principles illustrates how traditional Chinese culture serves as a significant foundation for modern China's rapid development and societal progress, presenting a unique model distinct from other global powers. By embodying these values, China aims to navigate its complexities and challenges in the contemporary world effectively. This chapter highlights the interplay between culture and statecraft, showing that the values deeply embedded in the Chinese psyche are instrumental in crafting policies that aim to foster unity and progress. when asked to describe, quote, socialism with Chinese characteristics as a national policy. And this policy, very important, socialism with Chinese characteristics, is very important in China. The AI returned the following. The socialism with Chinese characteristics is China's official national policy framework, articulated by the Communist Party of China, CPC, since Deng Xiaoping in 1982, adopting Marxist-Leninist principles to China's, quote, primary stage of socialism, unquote, through a socialist market economy. CPC leadership and phase modernization toward common prosperity. The core components of socialism with Chinese characteristics are, number one, the path. It prioritizes the economic development as the center, adhering to four cardinal principles: CPC leadership, socialism, the people's democratic dictatorship, and Marxism, Leninism, Mao Zedong thought. Reform and opening up while building a socialist market economy, democratic politics, advanced culture, harmonious society, and ecological civilization. Theoretical system. These are the core paths. Theoretical system encompasses Deng Xiaoping theory. 3 represents, from Jiang Zemin, scientific outlook on development, Hu Jintao, and Xi Jinping thought, evolving to guide governance in contemporary conditions. And again, each of these leaders building upon, not separating himself from, building upon the leadership, the previous leadership. The third institutional system features the People's Congresses, the Communist Party, the Chinese Communist Parties led multi-party consultation, ethnic regional autonomy, grassroots self-governance, socialist rule of law, and public ownership dominant alongside diverse forms in a market framework. The CPC leadership is deemed its, quote, greatest strength. And culture draws from 5,000 years of Chinese tradition fused with revolutionary and socialist elements, aiming to foster modern, national, scientific, socialist values oriented toward the world and the future. So we're almost finished. Policy implementation. This policy integrates planning and market mechanisms, rejecting rigid planned economies, while preserving public ownership and CPC oversight to liberate productive forces, promote people-centered development, and achieve national rejuvenation by mid-century. It justifies private enterprise and foreign investment as tools for socialism in China's context, contrasting pure capitalism by subordinating them to state goals like poverty alleviation and green growth. And when we're talking about subordinating these values to state goals, U.S. has never, ever, well, no, I can't say never, because it was attempted to be done during the early Roosevelt years. Alleviate poverty. And there was an attempt in there to get green growth, even though the green growth was limited really to rescuing the land, the topsoil. But they could pick it all up again. Based upon the book and this report, I'm asking the question, how feasible is it that the African Union will follow the Chinese model for sustainable development and poverty eradication for its future? I asked that question of Acid of Perplexity AI, which to me, Perplexity gives the best answers. And let me real quickly. Okay. And let's see what Perplexity said to that question. Based upon the book and this report, how feasible is it that the African Union will follow the Chinese model for sustainable development and poverty eradication for its future? The African Union pursuing the Chinese model of sustainable development and poverty eradication, characterized by centralized state-led planning, massive infrastructure investment via BRI style, Belt Road Initiative style financing, one-party oversight, and rapid industrialization under socialism with Chinese characteristics is moderately feasible. In select policy areas like infrastructure and poverty targeting, but faces significant structural, political, and capacity barriers for wholesale adoption. When considering China's plans for a future world, how far in advance does the national plan project forward? There's another question I asked her. China's national plans project forward up to 2049, the centenary of the People's Republic of China, PRC, and target date for becoming a fully fledged modern socialist country, with intermediate milestones at 2035, basic socialist modernization, and through sequential 5-year plans, like the 15th, 2026 to 2030, serving as building blocks. And long-term horizons, China's strategic plans integrates short-term 5-year plans. The 14th from 2021 to 2025 and the 15th 5-year plan, 2026 to 2030, in 2-step goals. Achieving a per capita GDP akin to moderately developed nations by 2035, then national rejuvenation by 2049. Embedding global visions like the Belt and Road Initiative, multipolarity, and technological self-reliance. Key milestones, 2035, the basic socialist modernization with high quality development, technical self-reliance, and, quote, beautiful China, unquote, green goals met, carbon peak achieved. 2049, comprehensive modernization, elevated global influence, and common prosperity under socialism with Chinese characteristics. So lastly, the global implications of all of this. These timelines frame China's future world as a multipolar order via BRI infrastructure, green leadership, example 1,200 gigawatts of wind solar by 2030, and poverty eradication models exportable to global South partners, contrasting U.S. NATO short-term cycles with decades-long state-led continuity. So we have this new book, China Changes Everything, an anthology by social justice activists, journalists, and commentators. China Changes Everything. I've done the best I could today to add the development pathway. I was not invited to write in the book, and had I been invited, I most definitely would have included something dynamic. But you and I are here together. And that question still haunts me that you asked a little earlier, Sister 4 Africa 1. The question still haunts me. Is it realistic to assume? I did ask her a question and she did respond. I asked her, do you, quote, believe, unquote, that it could be done? She says, I absolutely believe it can and should be done, but not without a revolution in minds of continental and diasporan Africans. I do, however, see Kujichagulia villages as a start in this process. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I appreciate you putting your faith in us, being capable of starting ourselves. A lot of people don't share that faith. Obviously, I completely agree with everything you wrote. Get ready. Big things are coming. This is December. And it is our annual fund drive. This is December fund drive month. Go to our catalog at http://CRP 2012 and get the book, The African Future. It has detailed plans. It has details of the plans. And also get Kujichagulia villages for your participation. Anybody who doesn't have Kujichagulia villages, make a donation. Make a donation today, right now. Right now. Make a donation. And I will send you a copy of Kujichagulia villages. But do it quickly, because we're not doing so well. I'm just going to leave it at that. It's a hard time, and we're doing the best we can, but boy, it's not going to be easy. It is not easy. Tomorrow, I'll be back with our ongoing AI class. This will be, I think, volume 11 of this course. It's a 28-part course. And already, we're having a good time. So I wish you all peace, prosperity. I hope that you get a chance to see what we're doing, to participate in what's going on. It's a beautiful thing. And it's going to be even better the more of you that participate in. We've got to do a better job of telling people about what we're doing here. I cannot overemphasize that point. Our audience has just really dropped off the map. But we're going to do better. I want to thank you all for your participation in LIB Radio. Your favorite, we aim to be your favorite. We are LIB Radio, LIB TV. We are living in black.com. I wish you all peace and prosperity to each and every one of us for all you do. We are so wonderfully grateful. Peace to each and every one of you.